Hey guys, welcome back to Creating Careers Podcast. On today's episode, I had a chance to sit down and talk with Garrett Lee. Garrett is a very talented songwriter, musician, and production sound mixer. And Garrett is part of the duo that makes up Mud Films with Trey Walker. And he's really is just a very talented and humble person. I genuinely enjoyed this conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you today. Check it out. Well, Garrett Lee, thank you so much for joining me today on Creating Creators Podcast. I really am excited to talk with you. I met or I talked with your, I guess I would call him your partner in crime, maybe.
That's right.
Trey Walker. The two of you seem to work a lot together, whether it's you capturing his headshots or whether you're doing sound design or capturing sound on set with him. And I understand y'all sort of run together in the mud. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it's in the growing phase right now, but we've established something called Mud Films in the last year. And we've had two very different journeys that have met on a crossroads somewhere, and it's been a good marriage, if you would put it that way, of production. You
Yeah.
got a good cam op and sound, and you put those together. If you start there, you got a pretty strong team, I would say.
Oh, definitely. And he seems to be really great at what he does. But then I look at your stuff and I'm like, well, hell, this guy could do pretty much everything also. Like this guy, I mean, because you shoot, you seem to edit, and then also you capture sound, and then even when you're not capturing sound, you seem to create it out of thin air as well. So I mean, you seem to
Yeah.
be a little bit of a jack of all trades.
Yeah, man, my journey has been a pretty interesting one, I guess. Starting back, I'm 35 years old now. I picked up the guitar at age 11. That's where it all started. I was just entranced by music, and it just made me so happy as a little kid to see somebody playing the guitar. And so started doing that, and a few years into that, started dabbling into songwriting. And at age 15, I recorded my first CD. And I won't tell you what that name is. I don't want anybody to find it. I'm there's a few people out there that have it. But, and then
And those
age,
people, you've got them under lock and key a little bit, right?
that's right. But anyway, started my journey as a singer-songwriter from a young teenager. And I can remember when I was 15 years old, man, my mom would drop me off at events, and I would play and she'd come pick me back up or something. And so I got off to the races pretty early, and I knew that's just what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be a songwriter and perform, and didn't really care for school all that much. And so through all of being a teenager, I got my first job at Chick-fil-A at 16, and just doing gigging and working Chick-fil-A, and always knew that I didn't want to go to college. I can remember now just teachers thinking I was just absolutely insane. Preparing for the SAT or whatever they call it. And I was like, I don't need to. I don't need to. I'm not going. They're like, what? It's just like, I'm not going. I never wanted to go. I kind of always knew what I wanted to do and what that would look like. I didn't know all the details. I just knew in my heart. I'm like, man, I'm on a path, and I'll be okay. And so, um, playing gigs, writing, recording projects, and, working at Chick-fil-A up until about 21 years old, and quit Chick-fil-A and kind of started DJing at a radio station here locally and traveling. So I started traveling in the band and doing my own gigs, doing that band. I would open the show, then I would swap to the electric guitar and play in that band. It was just really fun couple years. And so my life was just music, right? Music, and at the time radio, and learning how to be an on-air uh, voice. I guess it was just did that for about a year and a half on the radio, and then soon after that, I kind of got the call on my life to become a worship leader at a local church. It was a church plant, and it was a buddy of mine was at a church and they were planning a church out of a church. And so there's like, we need a worship leader. And for whatever reason, I just felt so compelled to do this. And I was like, this is okay. This is right. Right. I'm going to do this. And so got into that. I was 2011, leading the band, building everything from scratch, which if anybody's in the church world, they know that's already a gift, is to be able to build a ministry or stylistic or whatever from scratch. There's no red tape, no politics. It's just you doing it. And so I had a lot of that freedom. And then shortly into the life of the church, is when our pastor at the time wanted to get into video. And I had shot pictures. I'd gotten kind of a love for taking pictures. I asked for like a Canon 60D or whatever they call it for my graduation gift. And so I got a good camera, and I was just taking portraits just for fun. I wasn't like working. I wasn't getting paid for it. I was just, inspired by the camera. And so I really knew right then, right out of high school, it's like the camera, really fills a creative need as well as music. And so shortly into that ministry life, here I am figuring out how to shoot video and edit in a room by myself. I was like the only full-time staff. And so tasked with this mission of like, we're going to record these baptism testimonies, and, which required a talking head and interviewing somebody. And I've never done that. Right. And so I really cut my teeth on in a room by myself, YouTube pulled up, I think it was Logic 9 at the time, and early Final Cut. I think even before, maybe 10 was out, maybe it just came out or something like that, but put in just countless of hours of figuring it out on my own. Never had anybody that I knew personally that could hold my hand or give me the pro tips or anything like that. So I just learned on my own. And so baptism videos then turned into creative series videos for sermon series. And then I started being creative of like incorporating friends and like, hey, let's draw out a storyline. And so I'm just doing all these things. And little do I know, I'm just honing a skill that would majorly pay off years down the road. Mm-hmm. And so here I am doing all this, in my mind, real successful. And I look back on it today, I'm like, oh my gosh, whether it's just the technology of cameras, then, it's just like, I didn't know how to shape light. I was just guessing at everything. I was just setting it up, whatever felt good. That's what I was doing. And so, so did that for nearly 12 years. And it was coming about November of 2022. Well, actually, a year before that, I just felt so like it was time to turn the page out of ministry. And I wanted to do more just professional production, whatever that looked like. And so I let the church know I'm going to go part-time. I'll back up. So kind of like most everybody's small town church story with the worship leader does everything, does the website design, does the video shooting. I mean, it's just like, we didn't have a staff for all these things. So the majority of the work I'm doing is design and video editing and whatever. And so, so it was time for me to turn that page. I'd kind of built this thing up and, got a good, had some volunteers in and out over the years, but just a good system with the church. And so it was time for me to step out. I went part-time. So then I'm just leading the band. I'm just holding a rehearsal. And then I went into business for myself and I created Lee Sight and Sound Co. And what that just kind of encompassed was pictures, video, and performing. And, and so I would go out there and I was getting, whether it was portrait work or real estate work or small business work, it was like, I acquired and honed these skills over these years to where I had the confidence to do that. And so I transitioned out of full-time ministry, and me and Trey found ourselves at another local production company in Columbus working together. And we had kind of worked a little bit together before that happened, but so we were kind of becoming good friends, and the chemistry was there. I was like, I really, we have similar upbringing, similar, you know, childhood stories, and so we could relate on a lot of levels. And so we just really gravitated to one another, and I just really thought a lot of them. And we're 6 years apart in age, but we kind of have always had a lot of mutuals, and so it was a cool thing. So I was like 5 months into this production company, and I just realized, maybe this is not the right move for me. They really need somebody full time, and at the time, I was like, I just want to work for myself, kind of more monetarily, instead of working an hourly wage. Like I need to make money. I got a family I got 3 kids and a wife, and these times are hard. I just need to do what's best for my family. And I love that team, still work with them today. But so that's what I chose to do. So I stepped out really quick on that. But, while I was there, I kind of filled the role of location sound mixer. And, it was kind of treated in a way of like, oh, I know you probably don't want to be on sound, but you kind of got to right now, and just kind of hang in there, and, we'll get you shooting or whatever. And I was just kind of thinking the whole time to myself, I was like, I mean, I'm down with sound. Sound's been my life. It's like I've produced my own music, and I've recorded in the studio atmosphere, and I just love audio. I love audio, so I'm like totally down with that. And so once I left out of that company, I was working for myself, continuing to do that. And then me and Trey just started ending up on jobs. He just started hiring me, and we just started doing everything together. And then shortly after that, it just kind of made sense. It's like, let's start our own thing. I mean, the chemistry's there, the passion and the drive is there. We're very similar in that regard. And so, we kind of created this thing, and, and it's very much in the building phase right now, Mud Films, but we're so pumped and excited of like just this vision that we have and what we want to do. And so, yeah, I've just been doing some reminiscing here lately, just on all of what I just said, and just how thinking all the way back to high school, I don't want to go to college. And then looking at myself today, I'm like, I'm doing all right. I'm making it.
Definitely.
I say often, I really am living my dream. Absolutely. I may not be making millions of dollars, but I truly wake up every day, and I do what I want to do, and I do what makes me happy. And I don't show up to a cubicle every day or whatever. It's like, I really do what I love to do. And I just couldn't be more thankful for that,
Yeah. I came out of the classroom. I was a teacher. And
Okay.
it's amazing how many times you sort of run across those kids, and even in the world of education, we are sort of trained, especially the old school mindset was, you go to college, or there's some students that we say, okay, well, you're going to go straight to the workforce. And usually back in the old days, that was due to like something that was almost like an impairment, But it's more and more, I think education has moved to the idea that like there's so many opportunities, not to mention we've sort of created a vacuum and need of like trades and skilled workers.
Right.
And just people that they're intelligent. It's not that there's a lack of understanding. It's that, you can make a really successful life and family and even wealth, significant wealth, without going to college. Matter of fact, you start off oftentimes a lot better off towards wealth without all the debt right out of high school going
That's
into
right.
college. So
thinking about my kids and, thinking about and telling what it's going to look like. My kids are 7, 5, and 3, so I got quite a minute before we're even entertaining those conversations. But nothing makes me cringe more than the thought of going to college just to go and not knowing what you want to do.
Yeah.
My gosh, you know, if anything, do a trade, go to a 2-year program, apprentice during that, make some money during that. Just whatever you got to do to just start making money,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just, that's what I'm going to tell my kids. Don't go unless you want to go be a doctor, something
Right.
that just requires the school training. Otherwise, just choose wisely.
Well,
So
and I love the idea more and more in high schools, shifting away from the four core and really because that all even dictates or moves towards college. What I'd love more is this idea of like career exploration and even like following passion, sort of like what you talked about, like the idea of having an opportunity to delve more into music when you're in high school and learn like, well, let's learn the business side of music. Let's learn the technical side of music. Like, it put
mm,
giving kids the opportunity to explore careers that are outside the four core, if you think of it that way. I mean, and that's what I ended up moving into later. I started off as a history teacher and then ended up becoming a marketing teacher. And in that, we did like photography, video. Never got
nice.
into sound design really. Got into some animation at times with some kids, but it became more of an opportunity of like kids following what they were really interested in rather than
Yeah.
hey, this is what we're told to teach you, and so sit down and listen. So
Yeah.
I think in general school's getting better, and I think people's mentality of college is getting better. Um,
That's right.
but
That's
but
right. I
that
believe
that's
it'll
coming
look.
from somebody that's got a lot of college debt still.
Yeah, man.
I might be jaded.
Yeah, I think it's going to look completely and utterly different, 15 years from now.
Oh, definitely.
I just think it will. So I think it's changing for the better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, you've got a really interesting story in general. I mean, I love the passion of music. Most of the time, it seems like people find that passion, but then never really find a good way of like making money with that passion. To be honest, I mean, you got the big stuff. Hey, perform on stage, right? And there are
Hmm.
people that aspire to do that, but really, unless they sort of hit it big, which is a lot of times right place, right time, right
That's right.
connections, they can't always figure out a way to, okay, well, these are the interests I have, these are the skills I've built. How do I make like how do I make a sort of a family lifestyle kind of career
Hmm.
out of that? And you seem to have found your niche, so to speak.
Yeah, music is, man, it a lot of times it could be confusing in my own head and just kind of how I explain it and how I deal with my own emotions with it. Now, obviously, I can say today, yeah, I've been consistent. I've always tried to write songs, record songs, perform songs, and I've done a heck of a lot of performing over the years. But I can't say that, I've made a good living as traveling as a singer songwriter. I've had experiences, I've done that. And it seems like when I was coming up, things massively changed, right? It's like social media. I mean, thank goodness I experienced majority of high school when there was no social media. It was like the last little bit of privacy and freedom. I think we all like just, you know, growing up in the 90s, like I just love those memories of just that not being a part of our life. You know, but with the music industry, it just flipped it on its head, right? I mean, it's just like before it was just CDs. You could go play a show and sell your CDs and walk away with, you might sell a good little bit of CDs that night and you leave home with $1,000 or more. And it was like cool. But when CDs got phased out, nobody's buying those anymore. Music's free streaming, I guess. And you're making a partial of a penny a stream. And so your real money in music these days is getting out there, playing a live show, earning an honorarium, or end up maybe have your stuff end up in a movie or some sort of licensing publishing thing where you're getting the royalties, and that's about it nowadays. And then it's like, I remember a time where it just seemed like when you would post things online, you got so much more views and interaction. And then what happened? Social media became an absolute business, and they had to make money. So then they bottlenecked everything. And now the 600,000 people views that you were getting are now 100 views. And now you got to pay money to break through that thing. And so I made up my mind years ago that, I'm just going to walk through the door that's open, and I'm just going to go down these roads that are obvious to me, that feel good, but I am not going to like let views, listens, likes, comments, or whatever dictate my happiness or define success for me. I write, I create for music, mostly because I have to. I just have to. I have to do it for me. I have to do it for me. I have to express myself through song and sound because that's what makes me happy. That's what fulfills me. And at the end of the day, if it's 100 listens and that's it, and it hits a wall, it's 100 listens and it hits the wall. But it's like I put it out there in the universe, and one day when I'm gone, and I'm leaving a legacy, right? It's like maybe more people will listen to you when you're gone. That happens a lot. With just in the world with artists, they're like, people just want to listen to them now that they're a past memory because it's nostalgia or whatever. Whatever. But I just made up my mind a long time ago. I'm not gonna define success over anything, but I get to do this. I'm doing this, and that's what makes me happy. And so, um, you know, I've let a lot of my projects expire over time just because I felt like when I was closer to 30 is when I really found my voice, where I feel like I found my voice. And so right now I got some singles up, and an entire album from like 2021 is called From the Ground Up, latest single called Devils. But I've got about three other albums that I should probably put some of it back up because a lot of the local community still talk about it and ask about it, and I want them to have access to it. But yeah, it's just been it's been really strange navigating how to be successful and make a living in music, because a lot of it does seem like right time, right place, right time. Or I'm not really I don't believe entirely in luck. I believe there's a purpose and reason behind everything. But the right amount of money backing you is going to push you out there. It takes a lot to, or just now you could just be an internet sensation. And I still don't
Yeah.
understand algorithms. I still don't understand why something takes off. I still don't. My mind is boggled at the fast pace of today's society with social media and how to break through and just be heard. It's crazy. But, I'm just going to keep doing my thing, keep putting my art out there, and leave my legacy, man. I mean, that's all that I can do.
Well, I was just listening while just before we got on. I was listening to your song. Let me pull that up again. What was it? It was the Never Age, the one you wrote.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
assuming
Yeah.
that's regarding your daughter. And that's the stuff that I really appreciate about any artist. Really, is when it's so personal, but it's also
Hmm.
personal in the sense that it's personal to you, but somebody like me, who I'm a father of three daughters and one son, but like we can relate, and
That's right.
that's what's neat about music it's a personal experience, but then at the same time, it's a shared experience once you put it out there. And so that was a great song. I enjoyed listening to it. In general, your music, I personally love just the overall vibe and sound of it. It's definitely something that for me, I enjoy. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that have different preferences in music, but
Yeah.
usually I'm not
Well,
one that likes to move around a lot. I like to mellow out and just listen.
yeah. So yeah, people ask often, like, well, what's your genre? And I was like, oh, well, I would say singer-songwriter, Americana, soft rock. That's the kind of like category I would put myself. But I love just I think any songwriter would say this, but I just love to connect with people and an audience through the lyrics and experience of songs. And one of my favorite all-time things, and thank goodness I've been able to do this a lot over the years, is to gift somebody a song. I wrote when I was preparing to get married and move out of my parents' home. I was raised by my stepfather, and I really experienced a life of, you know, good and bad. Dealing with my real father, just kind of a life of alcoholism and just really not in my life much. And so that's a real brokenness inside of me, right? Even though my need was met through my stepfather, still a real brokenness with your biological father because you just don't really understand. And so I wrote a song when I was getting married called "The Man That I Am," and I gifted it to my stepdad, and that has just resonated. Like anytime I play a show, I've just definitely have decided I can't not play that song because when I do, I have those meaningful conversations like after the show, like, wow, that's my story too. And so I've been able to do that like with my sister, my stepdad, my wife, my kids, friends. I've just written songs and have gifted them a song, and man, that just fills me up and just overflows, and nothing makes me more happy than that. And so I like to write real raw personal stuff. And now that I've grown up a little bit, had a family, experienced some things in life and some hardships, and I think I write from just a real place, and I think that resonates through my songs. And so I really look forward to go out and do that, is to perform and to share stories. It's just not song to song to song to me live. It's like I gotta share. I gotta
Yeah.
bring people in. I gotta like connect eye to eye, and just bring them into that story because more times than not, they all have the same story.
Yeah.
And so just to be able to somehow, some way, put it in a song, one of my favorite things to say is music is medicine. Like without music, where would we be? Without melody, where would we be? Um, you know, it's such a big part of majority of everyone every day. It's like music. It just puts you in a different headspace. It's healing. It's meditative. It's gosh, it just means so much to me. And so songwriting is a very special thing that I'll just never stop doing. I'll just never stop. So
Well, I'm going to be watching to see the next live performance that you do. I would
yeah,
love to be there, man. I would love to see it and experience sort of that storytelling. But I do want to. I've got slides that I try to sort of use to direct me and keep me on pace, and I try to
good.
respect people's time. I don't always do that, but but the good thing is we've covered a few of them already. So typically I ask just who is the person I'm interviewing. So in your case, you go by Garrett Lee, but that's not your full name, right? Is Lee a middle name, or is
Yeah,
Lee
yeah,
sort of like just a name that sounded good with Garrett?
yeah. I'm a man of many names, and so kind of what it started, with, I changed my last name when I turned 18 to my stepfather. I took his name,
Yeah.
and because that's what I felt like I really wanted to do that. But those years leading up to that, Lee's my middle name, and Garrett Lee just sounded like a better stage name, and so everyone knows me as Garrett Lee. And then when I want to be under the radar and incognito, I'm Garrett Carden. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That
yeah,
works.
yeah. So when we got married, my wife forced me to put Garrett Lee Carden on my Facebook, so everybody would stop calling her Miss Lee. And I was like, well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's me. That's kind of in a nutshell. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, that sounds really cool. I feel like I've got to say this, and this is just, I mean, because you have brought up sort of the meaningfulness of your stepdad, and I come from a broken family in the sense that my parents were divorced. My dad was always involved in my life, and still is involved in my life and my kids' life, but my stepdad was one of those that, especially as a grandparent, he has just over and above sort of,
Mm,
just performed that role and just loved on my kids. I mean,
that's beautiful.
one of my twins, they're 17 now, but when they were born, one of them had to be in the NICU at Children's Hospital for a while. And my
Mm,
stepdad went in like every day and sang
wow.
to my
Mm,
daughter on her little isolette. And recently, he had a sort of a near death experience for him. It was a very
mm,
scary moment, and so after that, he came out and was just over the moon about my wife because she came and visited him, and just about family in general. He was just really in his feels and shared that a lot, and it just sort of hit home to me. And at the time, I sat down and just sort of thought it. I couldn't help but think about him and sort of what he's meant to our family. And I got to write him a little something, not a song that I can perform. Nobody wants that, but I was able to
mm,
tell him basically that, oftentimes you see stepdad and you think brokenness, but
right.
in our case, it was him that sort of made that stepfather stepping into the family made our family whole, and it was really cool.
Amen.
It was really cool, so I totally get it. I feel it. And I appreciate it. Now I've got to find that song and make
Yeah.
sure that I listen to it a few times. Maybe
Yeah.
even share it with him.
That's
So
It's part of the project that expired a few years ago, but I have a live. You can scroll down on my Instagram just a little ways, and it's on
yeah,
the live performance of it. And yeah, I think I've re-recorded it two or three times, different versions, but I just kind of want to do it again for some reason because I just feel like I keep expressing it even more and more. You know, I don't know,
how
just
do you
fine
not
tuned
just
as the years
become
go
a
on.
puddle on the stage, man? Because I have a hard time even telling you that right now without like, I feel like I'm
Hmm.
fighting back tears. If I was performing it on
Yeah,
stage, man, I would be sobbing.
yeah. There was quite a long time that I had tried to hold it in really hard on that song.
Mm.
But over time, you sing it so many times and you tell the story so many times, it still means just as much. But yeah, the choking up gets a little less. But yeah, and I try not to hold that back too much. I think even being vulnerable from the stage, people just gravitate towards that, man. They just love it. It's
Yeah,
real,
yeah.
and that's all I want to be is real. And all I want to do is connect. And like, that's my only goal, and that mindset of taking the stage of like, all I want to do is connect with these people really helps the nerves. I'm not thinking of technical. I'm not thinking about how to play a song. I'm not thinking. I put more work in to gathering my thoughts of the story and how to like transition into it than anything else, because that's the most important part to me is connecting on that level. And so when I'm truly am excited before I sing because I have that goal. I don't have the goal of I got to wow them. I got to, you know, play a certain way. It's like I want to connect with them, and then I want to have a conversation with somebody afterwards that means something. And that's my
Mm.
goal. And that just takes like all the nerves away. It really does. And I think that just kind of points to the fact that that's the most important part.
Well,
That's just the most important part.
the part of your journey that you sort of talked about that I hear through so many different people in the creative industry, you talked about how you sort of, at least at one point, were involved in the church and it was a part of your ministry. And I can imagine that very piece where you're like, all right, we're going to start with this song, but then we're going to transition to this song, and how that flows and how you sort of even communicate with the audience that in between. Did
Yeah.
that sort of does that influence the way that you now perform live?
It 100% has improved. I mean, yeah, it all comes together. I mean, I was thinking, aside from all the times that I performed, just at the church alone in those years, I kind of tallied it up in my head because I never took much time off in those nearly 12 years. And you're talking about rehearsals or Sunday mornings or maybe an evening or midweek or whatever it has. I, I took the stage and sang behind the microphone well over 1,000 times.
Wow.
And that's just church. And so, yeah, it's like absolutely translated out into the world of just ministering to people, connecting with people, helping them with lyrics and music. Yeah, it was one and the same. That's what I'm doing on
Yeah.
a Sunday morning, and so it absolutely just locks together the same
Yeah.
thing. So that's really benefited. Yeah,
It's amazing the number of people that really get their start in the church. I always
it
tell the
is.
story. My
It
youth
is.
pastor was a graphic designer, and he's the only reason that I knew what Photoshop was. Whenever I got the chance to teach marketing, they're like, "Hey, can you get a chance to teach Adobe or you can teach Microsoft?" And I was like, "Microsoft is boring. Adobe, I related to my old youth pastor who I thought was cool, and I was like, I'm gonna do Adobe. That sounds a lot better than
Yeah.
Microsoft." So, um,
Yeah.
and that sort of guided me down the path to where now I do video and photography in general. So, but that's
Yeah.
cool. I love that part of your story. I think it relates to a lot of people out there. Let's talk a little bit about your work, specifically your work on set. I'm curious to know, how has that part been for you, and how different or similar is it to what you do or what you have been doing with music in general?
Yeah. So, I've been doing a lot of thinking here lately. And in the last, I would say 3 years, I've thought to myself, wow, I've started a new career in a way. And so when I started to really join with others, linking up with Trey, linking up with some other production companies, and just getting my feet wet on true location sound, I was like, man, I really love this. And, little do these guys know, like, I want to be that guy. Please stop apologizing for putting me on sound because, man, it makes me happy. And so, honing all those skills by myself at the church, yeah, I was doing talking heads and I was doing a boom on a stand and just learning like what these things were and what all these tools were. I mean, I was just running into like an interface straight into my laptop into Logic or something. I didn't really have a in the field bag at the time or anything like that. And so then when I started working with this production company, I was like, they had all their sound gear and I just started like just taking notes and like learning. And it's like, okay, field recorder, cool. And, I've seen these. I've just kind of, I first started doing in the field stuff, just had like a H4n, and just a couple channels. But all those years prepared me for what I do now because I fully understand sound. Like engineering music from in the studio or live performing, I understand what EQ does. I understand compression and I understand gain staging and I understand, different types of, dynamic or condenser or cardioid or whatever, like all the different, like I know this thing, right? And that's like the biggest part of it is just kind of understanding the technical. And so it was like, I realized really quickly all I need to do in this situation is number one, acquire the tools that I need for the field and learn the lingo. of being on set and a little bit of set etiquette. And that's all I need to do right now. And so I started to do that. And, I would go online. I was kind of gravitated towards a guy named Ken Strain, is a longtime industry boom operator, been on movies and TV shows everyone's heard of. And he put out a master class out of his company called Boom Right. And I bought the master class, and I just took away those nuggets of just boom, like technique, how to cut way down on fatigue, and in these situations, like how do you properly boom, right? And that just shot me into this crazy fast pace of growth of just confidence and operating on set. And then I started to, acquire the gear that I needed. Just, you know, acquiring gear is just a black hole of money. And, it's like, trying not to, I know I can't afford the nicest of the nice of everything, but I know what I can acquire. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job at that. I knew I knew I wanted the sound devices recorder, but why? I was like, well, I really felt it was really important for analog limiters, right? Just like natural limiters in a field recorder. That makes a huge difference. And so I started like acquiring these non-negotiables. Like number one, I want to be taken serious when I go out onto a set outside of my friends. That happens, right? People look at your gear and they kind of make an assumption, make a judgment. Oh, that's where you're at in your journey, And so there's a little bit of that. Like I want to be taken serious, but I know that I can't afford what I want. But I'm just gonna, make the best of what I got, and what's important, I'm gonna get. And I feel like I'm in a great spot now. But and so as time went by, I'm just out there operating with total confidence. I mean, just, and constantly being a sponge, always open to learning. And so that's just my favorite thing is any experience, any job, any set. There's not a day that goes by that I don't consciously think at the end of the day what I learned. I always learn something new. Always. There is never a day that goes by that I don't acknowledge what I learned and how I'm going to apply it on the next job. And I'm so excited to apply it on the next job. And I just become better and better and smoother. And I think being kind of a one-man show for all those years really prepared me to operate in excellence as a location sound mixer, because I know exactly what they're going to be dealing with in post, because I'm an editor. I know, from start to finish, I know what you need, and I know, if there's a problem, I know this is a problem, and I know it's going to be a problem in post, so let's fix this now. And so I've just got a well-rounded picture in my head of the whole thing. And even just when I'm just primarily doing sound, I'm just aware of everything. I can shoot, I can gaff, I can do all the positions sort of well. And so it just given me that, just being on set, I know what's going on. I'm looking at the gaffer, I'm looking at the cam op, I understand. I'm not lost. And it's like I just needed that little bit of experience of knowing what the lingo is, and once we learn that, I feel like I can now go step onto any set with any company and perform and do well and hold my own and do it with confidence. And if I make a mistake, if I do something, good. I just got better, right? It's a lesson. And so that's been so exciting for me. And one thing that I particularly have enjoyed, which is crazy for a a location sound guy, and obviously we're still talking majority like you're one bagging it, right? That I have not had, even for me, my experience has not been a well developed sound department. I don't have a utility. I don't have a separate mixer and a boom op. And a lot of times I'm doing it all myself, which is a lot of work. And just like a camera department has the first and second AC, and like, these things are like, everybody's working together as the machine. And so, but one thing that I've been so excited about, which may just be so nerdy, is wiring people. I just like, when I first started doing that, number one, I realized how hard it was to conceal a microphone on somebody. Not just for a talking head, but if you're acting, if you're moving around, having a quiet microphone is hard work. And I had to, man, I failed and failed and failed. And then I just said, I am going to conquer this no matter what it takes. And just deep dived into tons of hours of watching. And then I realized how much little resources are online for like micing people. And so I finally found like the little corners where there's some good information. And I just soaked it all up. And then I acquired like all the right expendables. Like, shout out to Viviana, my favorite company. They make the very best expendables for wiring people, and just figured out what works. And now I go into set and I'm not nervous. I'm not awkward. I've wired hundreds of people now, and I go in with confidence, and I've acquired the tools. I've acquired, every person is different. As soon as I see a talent, I'm studying what they're wearing. I was like, if you could, if you could only just go into the mind of a sound guy, it's like is what we're thinking. It's just funny. But as soon as somebody walks on set, I'm like, is that what they're gonna wear on in the scene? Is that what they're wearing? It's like, and then I'm just studying them, and I'm already figuring up in my head immediately how I'm gonna wire them. Do they have a certain tie? Do they have a polo? Do they have a dress? Is it gonna show? So then I'm like, okay, I need a waist belt. I need thigh straps. I need ankle straps. I need all the things to be successful. And nothing makes me more happy than walking away from being on set all day and little to no problems at all with the wire. And I wired them clean. The wire stayed on even during the summer. It's sweaty. Oh, but I got the sweat resistant spray, and I created the barrier on there. And it's just like, it's just all these little things. It makes me so happy and so excited. And especially when I work for people outside of like Trey and they come back and they're like, man, we got into post, and this is great. Thank you. And I'm like, thank you, like, thanks for the affirmation. But I've just worked really hard at it, and it's so exciting. And obviously, you know, uh, always shooting for primarily to get the best sound on the boom, because that's going to be your better. But you got your situations where you gotta rely on the wire no matter what. The wide shot, the establishing shot. It's like my least favorite. Um, but yeah, I know I'm like just rambling on about that. But I'm just so I don't know. It just fulfills me, man. It's going out on set is like, it feels the same like going out with my friends playing in a band. It really does. It's like going out with your band, setting up, performing a gig, breaking down, shooting the crap, having a good time, loving every minute of it, even the sucky stuff. You just love it. It's the same way with just going out on a film set. You're with your boys, you're doing what and it's like, man, it makes me so happy. I really and truly do what I love every day. So
That's cool, man. The stuff that you talked about with there's two things I want to sort of touch on a little bit. First of all, the lav, mad respect for the fact that you can hide that stuff and work with it. I've done, like, normally am just doing like little videos. I always sort of, I've learned over time, I'm a videographer, not a filmmaker. And so you can imagine the kind of videos. Most of the time it's talking head. Most of the time it's B-roll, not really something that
Yeah.
somebody's got to be laved for. But the times that I've had to work with lavs, I hate it. Like a wedding, if I've got
Yeah.
to lav somebody, and I'm like, I always apologize to the photographer. I'm like, I'm sorry, this one's going to show up. So mad respect for you that you know how to do that. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to do a sort of a course, and I'll buy into that and learn from you.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've kind of noticed throughout the years too, that I love to communicate and teach what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've got a good, you know, knack for it, I guess. It's like I just love to teach as well. So I mean, I've kind of pondered those ideas of doing some local classes or whatever. Not that I'm the most experienced or I've got the most, impressive resume of projects that I've worked on. I don't, that's not me, but man, I feel like I'm seriously doing it, and at a professional level, like 100%.
Yeah.
I can go hang. And so, obviously we've had some great opportunities. We've done some cool shoots and with some names but at the end of the day, gosh, man, yeah. I walk away from set, and if I had a good day on wires, I'm just happy.
Tell
Even
me
though it
this.
doesn't.
Yeah. Tell me this. I'm curious to know, in camera world, people talk about gear doesn't matter, and if you're shooting with a Sony or you're shooting with a Red, or you're shooting with an Arri, it's like that gear is only going to get you so far. Other than that, it's really the experience of the people operating it or the people that are directing it. Would you say microphones are really similar? Like, does the gear matter, or maybe there's something more important than the microphone? Is there, like, where do you feel like the biggest investment in that gear should be, and does the gear really matter?
I think I think it can matter. Um, Now, I would feel confident enough to go out with a H4n, a cheaper shotgun mic, and do the job and get it done. Don't clip the audio. That it's all the skills that come together. It's the knowledge of gain staging. It's the knowledge of you know where the mic placement is and different things like that. But then when you can invest into the nicer stuff with audio, you hear and you feel the difference. And then you understand, you're like, okay, that's just really warm and rich sounding. And that is way better than the microphone that I started with. Or, this microphone has a much wider pickup pattern. So instead of a shotgun mic that's centered right here, I have like this. I mean, it's kind of an industry standard, but the Sennheiser 50, that mic could be like here and near about sound the exact same. But when you're dealing with like two people, you can really pivot, and play in the middle of people, and you're really not working hard to pick them up really well because of the pickup pattern. And so, but then my other shotgun mic, you'd have to really get over there to get. But then, like with the 50, it's like small movements. And so, it's like a lot of times the nicer gear can make your day easier. Um, and then you get into like the field recorder. Sound devices are in just about every bag for a reason. It's because of those analog limiters. It's really hard to clip. And when it does clip, it still kind of sounds okay. It's never ugly. And so it makes your job easier. But I would say my biggest thing as of this past year is just really trying to get into a better place with my wireless. In my personal journey, I've had the Sennheiser G3, G4 packs, but those are like, those are on like the 2.4 gigahertz or whatever. It's not UHF, ultra high frequency. And obviously, I've got my eyes set on like WheezyCom or Electrosonics that just has this incredible reach and range and less likely to you have interference or anything like that. So I really have stuck with a company, a newer company in the sound world called Deity Microphones.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you heard of them? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think they've done a fantastic job of offering products to, it's still probably considered pro-consumer, but in my mind, it's UHF, without, and I even got the Deity antennas for the packs, and I could get about 450 feet out and not lose reception, and that's pretty good. When I was rolling with like the Sennheiser G4 packs, they get 15, 20 feet away, and it started cutting out, and so really figuring that out. But Deity has made it very affordable, very attainable for someone that just doesn't have huge budgets. Like I've poured a lot of money in the microphones, recorders, lav mics, just really like nicer lav mics that could be 350, 400 a pop. But Deity made it to where they came out with the new Theos system. It's like a dual receiver with two packs, comes with two lobs that sound pretty daggum good. The microphones for like $1,100 for two channels. And so I've acquired two of those. So in my bag, I'm set up for 4 lobs, and I've got my recorder, but I still got my, my goals, but that the difference between 4 channels of Deity and 4 channels of like WheezyCom is like $12,000 versus $2,500.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, but I'm thinking like, okay, it's nice to have where they could walk through walls and they could do things and you don't have any dropouts. But then I think to myself, okay, when we're rolling, I'm always, majority of the time, in line of sight, pretty close. Do I need this right now? And I've kind of wanted to do some shootouts with some buddies who have it, and just to see and see if I can hear a difference. But if it's just strength right now, if I'm ever in a situation where I absolutely have to rent that, I would. But Deity is getting me through, man. I've got their whole time code system, their smart slate, their time code boxes, their wirelesses, and I'm rocking and rolling with Deity. And so it's been good, man. One day I'll be able to acquire like the WheezyComs and stuff because it's also the WheezyComs, Electrosonics, they do fit better in bags, and they've got different pros about them, but 5 times the money, maybe not right now, but
Right.
but that's my journey. So my normal setup is like a Sanken Cost 11, which is an industry standard lav mic on my Deity packs, and going into Sound Devices recorder, and I got my 50. I got the CMIT, Shep CMIT shotgun. I got those. Those are my 2 main shotguns, and I've got the CMIT living in a blimp for outside, and rolling with the K-Tech boom pole, and it wasn't this past year I invested in a really nice boom pole, and I'll tell you, that's like equating a cam operator getting a really nice Sackler, is what that is getting like a really nice K-Tech boom pole, and so it's I feel really good where I'm at. As far as gear and stuff. So
I feel like gear is one of those things, whether it's camera or audio, the person using it can use any of it and use it well for the most part. It's just that the higher end stuff oftentimes just makes it a little easier for you.
That's
You know,
right.
whether it's getting that more range like you're talking about, or I think of even with cameras like the higher dynamic range, so you're not
That's
having
right.
to work as hard to protect the highlights or the shadows. You know, you've got that flexibility that it gives you. Oftentimes, just makes it a little bit easier to sort of keep it between the lines, so to speak.
Yeah. The nicer gear absolutely makes your workflow a lot better. It does.
Yeah,
But you can
yeah.
get the job done with cheaper, but you will hear a difference when you upgrade. So,
Oh, I can imagine.
um,
I can imagine. All right, so tell me this: what advice would you have for beginners? And do you care to
look at
touch
those
on any
old
of these
pictures.
photos?
Wow, dude.
Yeah, I
Wow, I'm
try to.
reminiscing
I
right now.
I try to do a little bit of a deep dive, man. And I'll tell you, to
See,
begin with, I was like, man, I can't find anything of this guy. I was looking on Facebook trying to find, I can't find Garrett Lee anywhere. And finally, what it was I think I saw your wife's Instagram and I saw her full name. And then I searched that in Facebook and I was like, there he is. I found him.
yeah,
So,
yeah, I told you. Many names.
yeah, yeah.
Um, oh yeah, so that first picture in the beanie, man, I was probably 16, 17 years old. Uh,
Good old days.
yeah, and then I see a middle picture. I think that was in Washington State. A friend was getting married, and it's the only time I've ever gone to Washington State. And we were hiking up by Mount Rainier,
Yeah.
and that was a beautiful experience. And then that picture on the right was when I was traveling in the band I was traveling in, and that was probably when I was 21. And
I
so,
always
yeah,
worry whenever I pull in these old photos. I'm like, what if I just think it's them and it's not? You know, and I've had that a couple of times when I've brought in a picture. They're like, "Oh, that's my sister," and I was like, "Crap."
that's
but
funny.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So, what advice would you have for people that are just starting out? You know, I mean, they're maybe it's people like me that sort of, because I have to, I do sound also, but not that I'm good at it by any means. Or somebody that, maybe they're really wanting to do sound design, or they want to be a boom operator or sound guy on set. What kind of advice would you give to people?
Oh man. Um, constantly be a sponge. Constantly, don't for a second think that you already know something. Go into it with an open mind, open ears. Be receptive to any constructive criticism. Don't, receive it well. Um, and just, work hard, pay attention, uh, you know, have fun, but know when not to goof off. Know when to just, center yourself and be aware of everything that's going on. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else as far
Is there
as
is there like a big lesson that you've learned, or maybe one of the lessons along the way that you're like, man, when I learned this, it was a game changer?
hmm, let me think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Um, it's just part of this kind of unique um, pathway that I've entered into location sound is because I spent so many years in sound, and I just in a different arena of it. But it's so like like I said before, I just needed to pick up a couple little things to be good on set, and that was just lingo and acquiring the tools that I need. So it was just such a natural fit. But
Well, even
man,
studio recording, I'm curious, like, has there been like a big lesson that you learned along the way that you're like, this just really, especially in the idea of like editing or capturing, like, is there something that was maybe even advice that you were given along the way that you were like, man, that really just pushed me to a new level?
hmm, I don't know why that's so hard to answer. Um, I could think of just a million micro techniques and things that I've learned over the years. And, um, you know, it's either being an artist performing in the studio or being the engineer on the computer receipt, like, you know, producing, or gosh, I wish I had a great answer for that. Um, it almost seems overwhelming to think about what's the big thing? What's the big thing, right? It's like, gosh, there's 1 million little things that connect together.
Well, tell me
Um,
this: what do you think's the? Because this is something that I struggle with personally. Like, I struggle with getting, um, like, I'll have audio in my ear pretty well set. I feel like, and so it sounds good on set, but then I get it back and I listen to it in post, and the volume's like too low.
mhm,
And I feel like
mhm,
it's like, all right, I need to turn my headphone volume down, and I need to turn
mhm,
the gain up. And
mhm.
does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like that variation is can be
mhm.
so dramatic. Do you have any advice on like
That's right. Yeah.
how do
Mhm.
you hit that sweet spot to where what I'm hearing on set is what I'm going to be hearing once I get it into the computer, into
Yeah.
the editing software.
Yeah. So when you're on set on location sound, there is kind of a general area that you want to be in where you want your meters hitting. You want to leave room. So if you're doing like a talking head, uh, and they're just kind of talking normally, but you want to leave room to where when they do get more passionate or loud or laugh or scream, like you got to have headroom to go there and not clip. Now, sound devices will do a great job, but if you're working on a more basic recorder, you're pretty much aiming for -12 and -18, somewhere in that. And then, and I do hear this from like video editors that don't know sound. They'll talk about, got the sound files, and they're like -20, and it's so low. I was like, no, you got to bring it up. It's part of post processing. And so then you introduce compression into your mix, and then it's part of your post processing. And you know anything about compression?
I throw it on there, and then usually I
Yeah.
select like a drop down option.
Yeah, that's right.
I know enough
You know,
to mess myself up. Probably the
yeah,
audio I get, I probably screw up, and somebody like you could probably fix it.
yeah. So like what a compressor does is make it levels out the sound. So it like makes quiet moments, it brings those up, and it makes loud moments, brings those down, and it kind of
Yeah.
like levels out things. And then there's different ratios of compression, but that's part of it. So oftentimes you will pull out a sound clip and it does sound a little low, but then you got to process it. And so I know like I edit in like Final Cut, and like a lot of the times the first thing that I'll do is I'll hit the loudness check box, and it just kind of brings it up a little bit. And then I'll make my cut, it'll picture lock it, and then I'll like export all that out and I'll put it into Logic, and then I'll begin to shape with compressors, and you might have to do some noise reduction or whatever. And so then you bring those up, and you're aiming to about -6, -8 with that level. And then when you're finished, when everything's cut and finished, then you start kind of mastering the project. And then you bring that level up even more. And then you're getting close to that unity, close to that zero. And so, yeah, it's very normal for, and it's weird. Lately, I've kind of been recording a little bit hotter on my field recorder, uh, because you can get away with it with good limiters inside a field recorder. You can get away with recording a little bit hotter, and now I'm kind of aiming for like anywhere from -10, even close to zero, a little bit. But and so that's kind of been a little bit of journey over the years, just kind of figuring out that,
Do
because
you
if
have
if
any?
you're aiming,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
If you're aiming.
Oh, I was just saying, if you're aiming for zero on set, I mean, you're likely to clip. You know,
Right.
I mean, if you don't have the right tools, it's going to sound bad. They burst out into laughter or holler. Yeah, you're gonna be like, oh crap, you know, I didn't give myself enough headroom. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was going to ask, do you have any tricks on what you get people to say as far as doing like a sound check? Do you ever get them to
Yeah, yeah,
like just to be able to get more of a range
that's
from them?
right. That's right. As soon as I wire them up, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a headphone check. What'd you have for breakfast this morning? That's
That's
normally
it.
what I
That's
say.
yeah, yeah. I do the exact
And
same thing, man.
yeah,
I don't know where I learned that from. I was
yeah,
listening to somebody, I'm sure along the way, and that's what they asked them was like ask them about what they ate, and that's what
yeah,
I always do. I always ask. Usually it leads to. Either they had something really good, which you can sort of react to,
yeah.
and then that gets them excited, or they had nothing, which usually you can turn into
Yeah.
some type of joke, which will also
That's right.
escalate their volume up. So it
That's right.
usually gets a good range, I feel like, especially their
Yeah,
top end if you can get them to react to it. So,
that's
yeah.
right. And so, going back to your question of what's kind of those game changing things, I kind of thought of one,
Yeah.
especially like in the studio. One thing that I've noticed in the last handful of years is the difference between recording with really good premium preamps makes all the difference in the world is to having a good preamp for your microphone. And I've invested into a lot. I've got a kind of a rack, and I've got some Neve preamps, and I've got like my favorite piece of gear is my Neve Shelford channel strip, and it's like a Neve pre, an EQ compressor, and saturation. They got something called blue and red silk on there, but anything that you record through that channel strip, it's like it sounds so polished and so done and fit, and it just sits in their own lanes right where it needs to be. There was just a time where I was just recording tracks, and you look at your channel strip like in Logic or something, and you just got a boatload of plugins that are on. And you know, you're just now our computers have gotten a lot better, but you know, you're just wearing your laptop out on the CPU and all those things. And I have gotten to the point to where I track it in through a great preamp and a great microphone, and it just sounds the way it needs to sound. And then I'm looking like I've got barely anything digital going, I've barely got anything on, and it just sounds right. And so there's just something to, if you want to up your game in engineering and recording, is to the preamps are just so important. It's like you can only get it so good with just plugging like straight into an interface. But if you can get you some good preamps and drive those gains on there, and especially channel strips that have EQ and compression, it's like, wow, that was truly the biggest game changer for me producing music, was that, when I figured that part out. And
There
so
was
yeah.
I was trying to find on your Instagram because I think I came across this, but props to you, man. Your Instagram game has been strong for a long time. You
Oh
you
Lord.
got you go way back,
Yes.
man. Which I like. My Instagram, especially my personal one, is similar. But there was one picture I was hoping to find. I can't find it right now. But you've got a ton of just hardware. It looks like all on this rack. It almost looks like a wall of it. It may have been one of your first posts, actually. Now that I
Oh, that
think
was
of it,
I think that was visiting. That was I was visiting some studios in Nashville, way that
yeah.
way. So like
But
that's not my stuff.
but that's
um,
sort of what I'm imagining is this idea that like we talked about earlier, like hardware and gear, but whenever it comes to audio, I guess you have two choices. You either capture it through all of those like almost like EQs and stuff, like you're capturing it through the effects, or you have to add those on in post. And so that's sort
That's
of
right.
what I'm hearing you say is if you can capture it in such a way to where afterwards, I mean, really, you're not doing hardly anything
Yeah.
to it.
It at a minimum, if you just have, I mean, if you go on my Instagram and you see the highlight dots at the top,
Yeah.
I've got one for on set. I've got one that says tracking. You could find some pictures inside tracking of that rack. But at a minimum, if you don't have a channel strip, if you've just got a preamp that just, man, that just goes so far into just using something digital or just plugging in and using a preamp on an interface or something. But man, yeah, see, that's my studio in a rack. So, and there's better pictures as you go on, closer up pictures, but um,
I'm just gonna look at you for a little while.
yeah, yeah. So, I got on top there. That's my SSL compressor, and then I got some more compressors in there. But yeah, but
How many mics do you own?
oh, um, a bunch,
A
a
bunch,
bunch,
a
a
bunch.
bunch,
Yeah,
bunch
yeah.
of guitars. I got about 15 guitars, and
That's awesome.
I made up my mind years ago. I'm not getting anything. I'm never buying anything unless I plan to keep it a long, long time. So I
Yeah.
only buy stuff that I know that's going to make a difference, and I'm not just gonna, yeah. I buy very important pieces, and so I've got all my guitars. They all have their place and their uses, and all different pickups. And so when I do session work, another thing that I do, I'll do guitar session work for people, and I just got a guitar for most every sound that I'm looking for, whether it's single coil or humbuckers or P90s or whatever. So, and bunch of acoustics, bunch of electrics. And so, yeah, man, I just love it. Here lately, this last month, if you're not on set, I'm in the studio tracking. So, um, like I said, man, I truly am living my dream. I really am.
Well,
Yeah.
it seems like a really great place to be right now. You have obviously a beautiful family, and props to you on all
Mhm.
that, man. So, what's next for you? What's sort of the goal from here? Where do you plan to sort of, I guess, carry this forward into?
Yeah, man. Always stay creating. Trey and I have some goals for 2025, and that's just to make feature films. That's what we want to do.
Yeah,
We've got our corporate clients. Thank God for those. They keep you afloat throughout the year. But there's a lot of talks right now about they shot unfortunately I wasn't part of his short film on set for 14th Street because it was kind of one of those things like, hey, tomorrow we're doing this. I'm like, I can't. And so they filmed this short film called 14th Street, and he put it in some like little festivals, and we had like a little show, and I did some post sound on it, but now that's turning into a feature, and a
really.
lot of the backing is being worked out, and so hopefully first half of 2025 we're going to be filming a feature film, and
Now, was this
our first
written? Was this written by Trey or?
Yep, Trey. There's some other writers that got involved to finish
Yeah,
out the end script in its entirety, but Trey, it was derived from some real life experiences, and it's basically, in a nutshell, it's about two brothers, uh, love of boxing, and drug addiction. One brother's addicted, and just kind of like a lot of that turmoil with that. And and I haven't even seen the whole where the script has gone in the recent months, but there's a real likelihood we're going to be Mud is going to be having its first feature film first half of next year, and I'm super excited about that. That's what we want to do. If we're more passionate about anything of being on set, it's narrative.
Yeah.
whether it's short or feature. Like that's the kind of work we want to do.
Yeah. I
That's the
definitely
most fun.
I caught that definitely from Trey, but it's really exciting because it seems like right now there's such a big desire and really a ton of talent surrounding features. I mean, it's been short films, but it seems like more and more it's moving to the features in the Birmingham and even just central Alabama. And obviously, y'all are over there right on the Georgia line. But it seems like all of central Alabama just has a ton of
Yeah.
stuff that's like just right on the cusp of getting completed or getting
Yeah.
started. It's really cool
And
place to be right now.
there's this really big push here that I've learned about in this last year about just organizations that really want to see films come out of this Columbus, Georgia area, and how there is real backing and there's real organizations that'll put money up and they want to see 4 or 5 movies come out of Columbus every year. And it's like,
Wow.
I'm like, wow. And I'm just excited, amazed. And the fact that we could potentially be looking at 2025 with the majority of our work being on, 30-day runs of just working on a feature film, like, golly, super excited for that. And
Yeah.
I'm always going to be recording, writing, performing music, and doing that at any opportunity I have. But really looking forward to the bigger feature stuff. That's
And y'all
cool.
have a documentary that's coming out that y'all just did, right? With
Yeah,
Columbus, right?
that's our friends at Village Film. Um, we day played, or we were hired for a crew. Trey came up. I was location sound, and it's a gang documentary on the gang activity in Columbus. And so that comes out next month, December. Uh, from what I understand, it'll be everywhere. And so it's called Colga for
Yeah.
Columbus, Georgia. And
Yeah.
so it was like something like 15 days of out there filming or something like that. And the stories that we heard are just absolutely
Mm.
gut wrenching. I mean, just little kids, man, that are murderers. I mean, like hard folks that don't know any other way than what they do. And just being in the room with those people, hearing those stories, man, it was heartbreaking. Uh, at times a little unnerving, and just seeing their life, but yeah, really proud to be a part of that because it really turned out really good. It looks killer. And we love the guys at Village Film. And so yeah,
Yeah.
excited to
That.
have that kind of on your resume.
Yeah. It looked amazing, just what I saw, but also looked like y'all probably ended up in some really interesting just situations in general. And what's really challenging is, I mean, people that probably grew up, not in those kind of arenas. It's easy to look at that and think, oh my goodness, like I'd never go there. But then you have to realize that that's people's everyday life. I mean, same
Yeah.
thing with growing up in like, I think of dangerous countries, that people think of and they're like, oh, I'll never go there. Well, there's kids that are born in those areas. There's
That's right.
families that live in those areas. And even like what you're talking about with the gang violence, like there's mom and dads who love and are trying to raise their kids the best they can. And that's the world that they live in. And it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I think more and more it's great to know that those stories are being told, they're being shared, and hopefully, that there's down the road at some point, there's something that can be, there's some type of redemption in those
Yeah.
stories coming out and being shared.
It was an interesting experience. Anytime we had a location, it had to be real secret about where they were. A lot of these guys wear masks out in public because they can't be seen. Because if they are
Mm.
seen, they'll be shot on the spot. I mean, that's how kind of intense it's been.
Wow.
And we were in very secret locations where no one knew where they were. And these guys are sitting there with their pistols and extended clips and switches on their gun. I mean, stuff that'll send them away for years and years and years. And one of the guys that we interviewed actually got, shortly after we got done shooting, got picked up for murder, and he's gone away,
Mm.
gone to jail. And so, but there were things that were happening day to day that we would get phone calls in the middle of set, like so and so just got shot up, or I'm like, golly, man, you know, it was, we were never in too hairy of situations, but it's still like, yeah, I mean, we were still, we were with the guys, like, at any moment, anybody could ride up and crash the party. And,
Right.
and so that was, but hearing the stories of the gang members, and also we interviewed families that have lost sons that were gang members, or lost sons that were victim of gang violence, that were just gas station clerk or
Mm.
something. And just so heartbreaking. But the thing about all these gang members, man, they don't want to do it. They don't want to
Mm.
gangbang. They want to be successful in the rap game. They want to get out. They want to get out with their music. And really, from my understanding, a lot of them did these interviews solely to highlight their music. They weren't just telling their stories because they wanted to tell their story, but they were in hopes that their music would be highlighted, that it would kind of be something. But, your heart just broke, man, just hearing the stories and just seeing all they've come from and all that they know is, so I'm looking forward to it coming. I hadn't even seen the whole thing yet, man. They've had some little private viewings. I haven't been able to go to one, so I'm actually going to watch it for the first time in its entirety when I stream it. So it's exciting. Just a few short weeks away.
Yeah. Well,
Colga.
I look forward to seeing it. I think just the preview I saw and stuff looks incredible. It looks intense. But also, I think I can imagine it'll be sort of eye opening and for people. So,
Yeah.
props on that project. Props on all the projects you got coming up. That feature sounds great, man. So, all right,
Heck
this is sort
yeah.
of like the last question that I've got for you,
Holy cow! You're killing me with these pictures.
dude.
Ugh.
I know,
I,
no
I
beard,
haven't
man.
I haven't clean shaved my face in like 12 years.
Yeah. Well, we're getting to see maybe why that is now, right?
I have a little double chin going on. I've always been a
Ah.
skinny dude, but somehow had a double chin. So it's like I always got to cover that up.
That's funny. That's funny. All right. So tell me who it is that inspires you. And this can be multifaceted, sort of like who do you look at? I mean, you've already mentioned some people that you've learned from over the years. But who do you look at and like, man, I want to do this like they do, or at least at that level. Or who is it that you work with, or that you're around at times that just makes you want to do better at your craft? Anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I've already touched on, some of the people that inspire me, and then that's with Boom Opping out there on set. I just love how Ken Stream communicates and teaches those things. But you know, this may seem kind of corny or whatever, but like with Trey, we work together a lot. But as a shooter, like he's made me better. Like he's inspired me to be a better shooter. And so like I've spent years now watching how he moves, watching how he frames stuff up, and he's just inspired me in a great way. And I think us working together, we just drive one another. Um, I know it's not the greatest answer. I ain't got the greatest name drops or anything of people to go check out, but it's like, man, that's what's so neat about our relationship, though, is that we're both striving to be the best we can possibly be, striving for excellence, striving for whatever that just sets us apart. And we just move as one organism when we're out there getting it done. And I think he said a little bit about that when you interviewed him. But we don't have to say anything. We just read one another's body language or eyes or whatever. And so, yeah, man, my friend Trey, man, he inspires me to
Yeah.
always get after it and be better and what we do. And yeah, it's just really fun. This is just a fun moment, this building phase, and we want mud to grow and flourish and expand out and to have crew and employees and different things. And but it's really fun where it's at right now. Just seeing the beginning of it and doing the best we can, man.
Yeah, well,
But I
I'm a
mean,
fan. I'm a fan of both of y'all's. I think what y'all
I
have been able
appreciate
to do
it.
seems really great, and I think the level at which y'all are performing is definitely a credit to both your skills. I was really excited just about like this week and last week. I don't know that it's going to fully happen in those 2 weeks, but I basically looked at it as almost like sound trilogy for me because I talked with a guy by the name of Adam Wesley, and he's sort of like a composer as well as does sound design on set as well as in post. And then Eric Chapman, he's definitely one that does a lot of sound on set kind of stuff. And then also I think does some design in post. And then it was you. It was like the three of y'all. I had plans to sort of capture between last week and this week. Eric, I think his schedule and my schedule keep not quite lining up. I was supposed to possibly interview him this afternoon, but I don't know that he'll be able to do it. I haven't heard back from him yet, but anyway,
Very cool.
I really admire just the work of sound, mainly because I don't understand any of it. But I think
Yeah.
the stuff that you do, the way that your journey has sort of prepared you, even from your childhood and teenage years to do what you're doing now. And I think it's incredible. And I enjoy being just sort of a, uh, a consumer of the kind of stuff that you're creating. So props, man.
Heck yeah, man. And in our area, if anyone's listening to this when it gets posted, and if you're in around the Columbus, Auburn, or whatever area close to Smith Station, Alabama, if you're a sound mixer, let me know because I just know a few people out of Atlanta, but even though I'm kind of on my own in my area, kind of doing it to the level that I'm doing it, but I want to know others. But I just don't know who those others are right now. And but it's kind of cool because you get the calls for the jobs. There's plenty of cam ops and directors or whatever. They can fight and argue and bicker, and then I'm like just back here in the corner. I'm just the lone sound guy. But I want to know others in my own area. But just to talk shop and kick it, and if you want to hang out, just hit me up. But I don't mind. I don't mind being that guy though. Get
Well,
get more of the work.
I would definitely recommend that you at some point connect with who the Adam Wesley I just mentioned and Eric Chapman. Both of them are really talented sound guys in general.
Where are they out of?
Both of them are out of the Birmingham area.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Very
they're
cool.
yeah
Yeah,
they're
man.
both really talented. And Adam, I just went the other day to it was like a short film premiere, and then not too long ago before that, it was a documentary premiere where he had done the composing for both of
Oh,
those,
cool.
and I think even the sound design in the short film. It was like a horror short film that
Heck
he had
yeah.
done some of the sound design for. But both of those guys, Eric Chapman, I see him all the time on set. He usually does a lot of at least what I've seen documentary as well as like commercial kind of work where
Heck yeah.
he's the on-set guy, and I think he's done, I'm assuming he's done feature, and I know he's done short film as well, so he's
That's
really
very
good.
cool, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna continue to be a sponge. I'll never assume that I know everything. And I always love to learn something new. Always love to meet new people, work with new people. And yeah, always doing just the best I can.
Well,
Always.
well, I think you're doing pretty good, man. So I really appreciate you, Garrett Lee, for just being on here today. I look forward to this feature that's coming out. I also look forward to a live session that I'm gonna have to try to catch at some point. My wife
Heck
and I
yeah,
would love
man.
to come out and hear you just play, man, and hear some of those
Heck yeah.
storytellings that you do, man.
I'll keep you updated.
I would love that. I love that. Well, I appreciate you seriously.
It's a real pleasure, Brian. Thank you so much.